Netflix is betting big on South Korean market, and a testament to that is the streaming giant's decision to invest as much as $2.5 billion in South Korean movies and unscripted shows. Now, South Korean movies and shows have been riding a crest in the global entertainment space. The content on these shows have lapped up by the global audience and has given ample content ideas to streaming platforms to beef up their offerings in other markets as well. But what makes South Korean content different, and why have they caught the imagination of people worldwide? We are going to be discussing that. With me is my colleague Kartik Malhotra. Also joining us very shortly is Krishnakumar. Kartik, coming to you first. There seems to be a thrust towards K-drama. You know, we heard about K-pop, and now we are moving towards K-drama, and an increased number of viewership that even Netflix is hoping to catch up to.
So Shweta, what did OTT platforms really do? I think at a large level, they've democratized content, entertainment content, just like YouTube has democratized content of all kinds. So what OTT has really done is it has brought some world-class cinema as well as fiction content and even documentary content, non-fiction content to your mobile phone, my laptop, anybody else's smart screen. You don't really have to go rent a DVD, you don't have to go wait for a blockbuster film to be released in the theater anymore, and you really don't have to download torrents to discover cinema and discover gems of great content available worldwide. So we've seen specifically on Korean content, we've seen actually that drastic shift. It was something that was discussed in very elite drawing rooms at one point in time. The most affluent people like Krishna, who will be joining us now, will share more on. But it was something which was discussed among the connoisseurs. It was discussed among people who are exposed to different cultures, exposed to different lifestyles, exposed to different geographies and techniques of cinema. That changed actually ever since Parasite got the kind of acclaim it did. Okay. Soon thereafter, you had Squid Game coming and really taking over the world of entertainment, not just in Korea, not just in India, Asia, across the world.
Across the world.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I'm seeing you're wearing a red top against a green backdrop. It pretty much reminds me of the episode of Squid Game, red light, green light. It's that pervasive. You know, it's actually come down to Korean content and Korean culture and Korean cinema really being, you know, the flavor of the season, so to speak.
Krishna is joining us. Krishna, what sets apart Korean dramas from other dramas and, you know, perhaps made by Western world, Indian world, and why is suddenly Korean dramas and Korean pop and Korean content hot cake?
You know, the funny thing is that none of it is sudden. That's the best part about it. Like Kartik rightly mentioned, the Oscar awards, that's what they do to, you know, certain geographies from where content is made. You know, so when Parasite won that award is when the entire world was like, oh, all right, Korean cinema. But then the fact of the matter is that we've seen, you know, Korean cinema. In fact, you know, there was a Bollywood film called Zinda. If you remember, it's a Sanjay Dutt movie. I don't know, Shweta, if you've seen it. You know, that is a remake of a South Korean film called Old Boy. So, you know, Korean content has been making inroads into global, you know, audiences for the last decade or so. What has happened by 2020, as Kartik again mentioned, that that phase when Parasite happened and Squid Games happened is when it really exploded and went on to another level altogether. Bear in mind, that is when, with respect to content like, you know, movies and TV series, whereas K-pop as a music, you know, as music has been famous with you know, teenagers across the world for even longer. The fact that you have an industry right now that is so big, you know, especially with bands like BTS and Blackpink, and you know, BTS and Blackpink are the biggest of names. There are tons of other bands that are very famous, especially among the youth here in India. So I mean, now you're talking about the most populous country in the world, and a huge chunk of this youth, the young, you know, from the teenagers, you know, from the 13 to 19 group till 20, you know, they are you know, crazy about K-pop. And then now you have the elders taking to K-dramas and K-series to the point where Netflix actually has a separate section called, you know, K-dramas, you know, separate, you know, the rail for that, you know, where you see only options available in that. So, you know, that's where it's reached. So in the sense that $2.5 billion, you know, fresh investment by Netflix into Korea is amazing. But again, it comes in the back of a previous investment commitment that they have made in 2021 for $500 million. So, 500 million, so in that sense, this is an addition, this is a continuation of something that Netflix has been working on. And so, yes, of course, $2.5 billion is a big number. But then again, you're talking about content that's not just meant for Koreans or people from America. You're talking about content that's meant for the entire world. Squid Game, incidentally, is the most watched series on Netflix, 1.65 billion views in the first 28 days. That kind of records have not been broken since Squid Game has been out. So in that sense, this is a continuation of a trend that Netflix itself has been doing. This is a continuation of a South Korean sensation has been building for more than a decade. As of now, South Korea's entertainment exports are worth $12.5 billion by themselves. So that's the kind of impact that South Korean content has across the world, and that's how much valued it is. So if Netflix wants to achieve the kind of supremacy it wants to, consider the competition that it has these days, and considering the problems that it faces these days, so Korea seems like a very safe bet, and they're absolutely going for it. The question here is, Shweta, this is India's opportunity. Clearly, people are willing to watch content with subtitles. When Parasite won, the director of the movie, Bong Joon-ho, when he won the Oscar award, said that all people have to do is jump over the 1-inch barrier, the 1 inch below your screens where the subtitle is. If you can get over that barrier, then the entire world is your oyster when it comes to content. That's what he said, and that's what's happening. So the question here is, India should be watching it, Indian content makers should be watching it. Bear in mind, after the news that Netflix said that it will announce $2.5 billion, all Korean production houses and stocks skyrocketed in the South Korean markets, because they're looking at tons of new money coming their way to make content. So India,
you mentioned
Indian
India.
Bear in mind, this was.
You mentioned India, Krishna. What are the key takeaways for Indian content creators from Korean dramas?
Yeah. In fact, the fact of the matter is that, like Korean dramas, you've seen the OTT wave also impact the consumption of Southern content in India. So the thing is that if there's any lessons, I would say be yourself, do your thing, and do it well, whatever you want to do, because there is no one particular genre that's doing well. People are liking different kinds of stories, romantic series, drama series, thriller series, extremely violent films, like Parasite as well. So all kinds of content is being loved. And of course, the young K-pop content is being loved. So you don't have to restrict yourself to any one particular genre or format or anything of that sort. Take what you want to take, do it with full conviction, do it well, do it of top quality, and the world is out there to appreciate you. That's the lesson that you should take from Korea, and also the fact that you've seen the government do so much for its entertainment industry. For example, Netflix's $2.5 billion announcement came after the co-founder, Mr. Sarandos met Yoon Suk-yeol, the South Korean president, who was on a 6-day state visit to Washington, D.C. So this is, the investment commitment being made to the to South Korean government, which is on a state visit. So we have to think of it as a both a nation-building thing, because these are all soft exports, as even the Prime Minister has often alluded to. So India's soft power, needs to be that muscle needs to be flexed globally. And for that, there needs to be concerted effort from both storytellers and content creators in India, and the people who help make them.
Okay. I quite like the slogan of be yourself and do your thing. And Kartik, I think South Indian drama has proved that on a global stage. RRR, Pushpa, and now to winning an Oscar. I think essentially the message out there is do something that you're unique at and try not to perhaps emulate what the others are doing. South Indian movie stars, directors have taken that a notch up.
Totally, and it brings me back to, in fact, what I started off by saying, that had it not been for Netflix, Amazon Prime, the OTT platforms available today, would you and I have bought a ticket to watch RRR or watch Pushpa? I watched both these films, incidentally, and KGF, incidentally, on Krishna's suggestion, right? I would not have done it had this not been available on my smart TV on a Friday night, Saturday night when I had time to kill. I would not have stumbled upon these films, and I would not have appreciated this kind of cinema had access to such cinema not been available to me. Right. But coming back specifically to the investment that Netflix is making, $2.5 billion, just to put this in perspective, is actually, if you look at, let's say, the total content spend that Netflix had in the year 2016, it was about $6.8 billion. So $6.8 billion, including all original, all aggregated, syndicated content, acquired content, everything put together, $6.8 billion is what Netflix was spending in 2016. And it has continued to rise, except for COVID year where it took a dip and then the graph continued. Last year, 2022, $16.8 billion is what Netflix has spent on content as a whole.
Okay.
Right. And now this $2.5 billion
from that
only on, $2.5 billion as a percentage of 16 billion on total content acquisition is a huge number. Right.
Absolutely.
Now, take into account in 2023, this is according to a report in Statista, 2023 this year, and they follow like the Jan to December calendar year, financial year. So this year, $7 billion is what Netflix is expected to spend on originals. 6.8 in 2016 for overall content acquisition to $7 billion only on originals.
Okay.
So what this investment, 7 billion as well as the 2.5, which would be consumed over time. I'm sure it's not a calendar year, financial year linked investment. It would be consumed over time. But what it really goes on to tell you is that platform companies today have understood that the value is not as much in the technology as in being the IP rights owner of the content.
Okay.
And that's the critical message. Incidentally, Netflix, which we all know as the streaming giant, is the largest paid subscriber sort of, aggregator in the world. It has 7.5 million paid subscribers, right? Which is the highest. It's a 25% market share in the overall video OTT streaming service.
In India or globally?
Globally. But Netflix is actually the 5th largest spender. It's got 25% paid subscriber share, commands 1/4 of the market of all paid video subscriptions, but it's actually only the 5th largest content spender. The top one being Disney, followed by Warner Brother Discovery, followed by Paramount, then comes Comcast, and then Netflix. So I think Netflix is really, with this investment and the overall 7 billion spent likely to happen in 23, and if this graph goes, I think Netflix will eventually understand that it has to own the content, it has to have the ability to have rights of syndicating that content and getting more income coming in, because we know people share passwords. Netflix has been trying to crack down on that, right? We know people who share passwords, right? We definitely know that this multi-screen log off from one, log into another is real and present, and it continues to happen. At the same time, we also know that that in the US, Netflix is experimenting with advertiser supported video on demand. So subscription driven revenue is going to be difficult to come by. So I think the larger message here is that Netflix is going a little more serious on original content creation, not restricting it only to the US and European markets where it has invested heavily in the past. The Crown, for example, being a prime example, Stranger Things. These have been enormous investments that Netflix has done to make original content. It's just spreading its wings outside of the English-speaking audience and getting into the regional markets and regional languages as well.
There's so much that we can talk about here, from password sharing to original content.